If you want to learn more about astrology, you have come to the right place. Welcome back to my Astrology Basics for Beginners series. I'm continuing my lessons on planetary condition by talking about planetary exaltation and fall. If you haven't seen my last video where I talk about planetary domicile and detriment, I do recommend watching that first because it's pretty foundational to exaltation and fall. So domicile, detriment, exaltation, fall are all known as planetary condition, which basically tells you when a planet is in a certain sign, what is the condition of that planet? Does it do well there? Does it do poorly there? Does it do really well there? Does it do really poorly there? Or does it do like normal and average there? It's also very normal to have planets in their signs of detriment or their signs of fall in your birth chart. It doesn't mean that you're cursed. It doesn't mean that your life is horrible. It just presents an extra layer of challenge. But if you have one of these planetary placements, like you've already had that your whole life. You've never known a life without a planet in that condition. It has built your character. It's all you know. It's who you are. With that said, I will read to you what Demetra George says about exalted planets. When a planet occupies the zodiacal sign of its exaltation, it receives the power of elevation to great heights of good fortune, where it can receive honor, glory, recognition, and respect. We also consider this like being on a throne, basically being a guest of honor in that house where all of the servants are dedicated to you and all of the resources can belong to you, and you just have a spot of great honor by being there. And then this I thought was just a very useful table that lists the domicile, detriment, exaltation, and fall for each of the planets. Unlike domicile and detriment, which is very sign-based, like each sign has a domicile ruler and each sign has a planet that's in detriment, exaltation is specifically by each of the traditional planets. Each of the traditional planets has a sign where it is exalted, and then the opposite sign of the zodiac is where it is in fall. And Demetra George says the following about the planets in their sign of fall. A person who has a planet in the sign of its fall may find themselves in situations in regards to the planet's own nature and house location where they feel weakened or marginalized due to a lack of authority or respect. So exactly the opposite of exaltation. If you have an exalted planet, that planet is the guest of honor in that sign. If you have a planet in fall, like everyone in that house that they're staying in is like, why are they here? I don't want to help them. I don't want to do anything with them. And here is the zodiacal wheel with all of the exaltation planets. I will go through them one by one. Beginning with the luminaries, the sun is exalted in Aries and therefore is in fall in the opposite sign Libra. The moon is exalted in Taurus and is in fall in the opposite sign Scorpio. The planet Mercury is exalted in the sign of Virgo, which is also where it is in domicile. So in the sign of Pisces, Mercury is both in fall and in detriment. The next planet, Venus, is exalted in the sign of Pisces, and therefore Venus is in fall in the sign of Virgo. Mars is exalted in the sign of Capricorn and is therefore in fall in the sign of Cancer. Conversely, Jupiter is exalted in the sign of Cancer and therefore in fall in the sign of Capricorn. Mars was in Cancer from like September 2024 through April 2025 and retrograde for part of that time. And that's why it was such a big deal that Mars was in Cancer for so long and so many bad things happened, because that is the sign of its fall. It's the hardest sign for Mars to be in. And finally, Saturn is exalted in the sign of Libra. Saturn loves those scales of justice, and therefore Saturn is in fall in the sign of Aries, and Saturn is about to be in Aries for about 3 years, so that should be so much fun. But just like with domicile rulership, Leo ruled by the sun opposes Aquarius ruled by Saturn. Aries, where the sun exalts, opposes Libra, where Saturn exalts. They are polar opposite. The sun is so bright and hot, and Saturn is cold and dark. And I said this in my last video too, like this does seem like a lot of information. It seems very hard at first, but after you start looking at charts and like really getting into this is like your bread and butter. This is like, I could do this backwards in my sleep with my hands tied behind my back. I don't know why that would impact my ability to think, but yeah. And I once again find it really helpful to understand this by thinking of the signs, each of the signs, as a house, like a physical house. This is the Cancer chalet. This is the sign of Cancer, which you have somewhere in your birth chart. If you have the moon in Cancer, that is the moon in her own house. She is the domicile ruler of Cancer. She owns this house. She knows where everything is stored. She doesn't have to worry about like not knowing where resources are or not being able to access resources. If there's something in the fridge, she's allowed to eat it like it's fine. If you have Saturn staying at the Cancer chalet, aka Saturn occupying the house of Cancer in your birth chart, that's completely fine. Like, he can go there and stay, even though he's in detriment. He'll be perfectly welcome. They will be perfectly lovely to him. But he just doesn't really have the resources that he needs to do his job correctly. Saturn is very slow. He loves rules. He loves structure. He loves resources. Cancer is a water sign. Water famously does not have structure, and also moves very, very fast. So he can be there. He just might have a harder time doing his job because like he's so overstimulated all the time. Now, if you have Jupiter, who's exalted in Cancer, in the sign of Cancer in your birth chart, like Taylor Swift does, then they get put in the special throne room. They are the guest of honor. Everyone is waiting on them hand and foot. They want something, you're going to run out to the store immediately and get it for them. Like, they are the guest of honor here. They do super, super well in this house, the best that they can do in any sign of the zodiac. But if Mars comes to visit, if you have Mars in Cancer or when Mars passes through Cancer in its normal zodiacal rotation, then we get like a little bit of an issue because it's in fall. It's just like not respected there. They'll let you in, I suppose, but they're going to be like, oh, it's you. You can stay in the basement. And then if you want a resource, they're going to be like, I don't think I can get that for you. So it's just like a challenging position because, especially for Mars, because Mars is all about action. Like, it wants to do things, but they're like, but like, you don't really have resources to do that. So good luck. Mezzi is back and he wants to sleep on the whiteboard. For another example, we have Aries, and for whatever reason, I'm envisioning Aries' house as a frat house, so I'm calling it Alpha Rho Sigma. Do with that what you will. Aries is ruled by Mars, so Mars lives here. This is his house. If you have Mars in Aries, you have Mars in his own house. He knows where all the snacks are. If you have Venus in Aries, that's the detriment planet in Aries. Once again, they can stay in the guest room. People will be perfectly nice to them. They just don't really have the resources that they need to do their job the best. Elizabeth Taylor has Venus in Aries. Like, it doesn't say anything about your Venusian qualities besides the fact that, you know, Venus is trying to be up here, like having a group call with her friends and painting her nails and like decorating her room, and just hears like the sounds of fighting everywhere outside. Now, when the sun comes to Aries, if you are an Aries sun, then that placement is exalted. You get to go up to the throne room and live there, and everyone's waiting on you hand and foot. But if you have Saturn in Aries, that's a sign of its fall. And once again, Saturn gets to Aries and knocks on the door and is like, hey, I'm here. And they're like, oh, you. Yeah, we have a room for you in the basement. And they lead you to a dungeon with like manacles, and they're like, and don't tell us if you need anything. Goodbye. And then they shut Saturn in a windowless room, which honestly Saturn's not too mad about. I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't, please let me know. If you have any questions, please let me know. And my name is Jessie James. I am a professional astrologer. If you are interested in booking a birth chart reading with me, a relationship reading with me, an astrocartography reading, I would love to do that. You can book directly on my booking page at calendly.com/theastrodiva. Love you so much, and I'll talk to you next time.